Hey YouTube, I was going to do a review of the new PPG WaveGenerator, but I got a lot of requests to do a tutorial instead, so we'll do that. But for anybody that wants my opinion, the short review is that this is Animoog on expert mode. If you've ever played with Animoog and wanted to have the ability to make your own timbres or to have a hell of a lot more modulation options, then this is absolutely the synth for you. I usually try to be really inclusive in my videos, and I try to get into all the various little details, but this is just not going to happen here. This would take an hour to do. So this is just going to be all the things that I wish somebody had already told me about, so I didn't have to try to figure it out on my own. I'm going to start off with the wave and spectrum editors. There's already a couple of great videos from Wolfgang showing off how these work, so I'm just going to give you a general overview. The spectrum is showing this swooping thing, and up here in the wave we've got a saw, and in this wavetable, it's a saw that's going through a high-pass filter, so it slowly starts to peel off the low end. And it sounds like this. Yeah, it sounds exactly like you would get if you were running just a normal saw through a regular subtractive synthesizer that's got a high-pass filter, as it is subtracting the lower frequencies there. And the spectrum is showing us partials, so if you already understand additive synthesis, then it's just working with partials. If you don't understand additive synthesis, the best way to get a handle on that is to look at a square wave to see how this changes. Over here, it's just this tiny little pulse, and as the pulse width increases, you notice the spectrum is changing into all kinds of new and interesting shapes here. For actually editing this and doing your own, the spectrum editor is best used with the pick rather than the draw, because the draw is just kind of a mess. You can't really fine-tune it very much, but the pick lets you grab just an individual. See, I'm moving all around and I'm not screwing up all the other partials, and this is made even easier by zooming in, and zooming in a lot. And you'll notice that the heights on all these partials are staying relatively similar, so it's not like trying to zoom up and down. But now I can pick individual things and peel them out, and you hear it's playing a little sample of what it sounds like. For shits and giggles, let me show you the initialized. This is just a sine wave, and you'll see it's only got one partial, and that's what all these partials that I'm talking about are actually made up of, as just these sines. So but that's enough screwing around with that. Now let us swap that back to a more generic square and play with the parameters now. So among our 3 oscillators and the filter and a whole bunch of LFOs and 13 envelopes, there's a lot of these little panels that'll tell you the help for that specific thing, and it'll give you a good explanation of what the hell's going on here. And there's extra information that even has pictures. But the particularly key things to be aware of in this are that each oscillator can be set to a different audio skew, and in the audio 1 it's using less of the overtones in a wave, and in audio 2 you're getting all of the harmonics in a wave, so that's great for leads and other high-pitched sounds that would be muddy if you were trying to have all of those frequencies in a bass. And then there's sub-audio, which we'll play with in a bit here, that lets you actually cut that oscillator completely out of the audio and use that as a tweakable LFO. And the volume for each of these is going directly into the filter. So if you set the audio source for 1 to just oscillator 1, it's going to completely ignore this. See, that's not doing anything. A particularly neat feature that makes this easy to use is the way that you manage the envelopes. So you've got the menu if you want to dig through all that, but if you just click on anything, like I select the filter cutoff and it automatically switched the envelope from my envelope wave to my cutoff wave. And you can have mountains upon mountains of modulations on pretty much everything in here. As you see, I've already got an envelope set for the cutoff, but I've also got the verticality of the key set to modulated as well. And you have two different slots for modulations, which includes lots of different things. And you get different options on each of these. And you notice the way that I'm bringing up these menus, by the way, I'm not trying to click down here at the bottom. Like that does nothing. But if you double tap on the whole general area, it brings up the menu. Even the pan got a lot of modulation treatment. You set your pan with this spread. And then you can mod that with all kinds of different stuff. In this case, I've set an envelope. And you see that the envelope itself has a loop on it, and you can configure that with the decay and sustain. Or kill it altogether. And now it just behaves as a normal attack, decay, sustain, release. And if you ever want to set that on an envelope that doesn't already have it, just flip to a set loop. So just using these modulations, we're not really even getting into the wavetable stuff. Just using these modulations, we can get some really great sounds. I've been having a lot of fun with this. So let's get into the wavetables themselves, because there's a few things in here that I'd like to show you that will hopefully make things easy for you. All of the various presets and wavetables and everything are really modular, so you can actually load up presets and only get the oscillator information, or specifically get everything except for the wavetables, and you can load up different wavetables on different presets. And there are a hell of a lot to choose from. Once again, refer to Wolfgang's videos to see how to make your own. It's pretty easy. Well, let me show you how pathing works, because there's some tools in here to make life easier. So you've already seen the linear, I'm sure, where you just make a line, or you can draw it out and make lots of lines. But if you want to have some finer detail over this, don't clear the grid, because that's going to wipe out the wavetable. If you made any changes, they're gone. But if you reset the path, you can now come in here and set the path points in a more deliberate way. Like... And not only can you have different envelopes for all the different oscillators, like in this case it's its own oscillator here now, so oscillator 2 is using its own envelope, which is way different from oscillator 1's envelope. But you can also use like LFOs or even oscillator audio. Like I was explaining before, we can set oscillator 3, in this case, to just be sub audio. And now we shouldn't be hearing any of that, so I can use that now as an independent source for controlling the modulation of oscillator 1's wave position. So now if I go over into oscillator 3 and screw with the octave range here, that should slow it down a lot. That's pretty interesting. There's also other places where you can use oscillator 2 and its audio as a modulation source. But perhaps even more useful is the idea of wavetable offset and using this with the horizontal selection. So let me remove all the modulators and turn off 3's audio and 2's audio. So we're just listening to 1 now. It's going to the... It's not actually paying any attention to this at all. You see, when I move this around, it's not changing this. So it's just going straight to the start position on that wavetable path. But if I change the offset, it changes the position vertically, right? If you go up enough, it'll switch into the next column there. Well, this horizontal offset actually keeps it to only doing the horizontal changes. So as I move it up 1, 2, it's not doing anything, 5, nothing. But as soon as it gets to 16, it moves directly over to the next column. So you can use that really creatively. So you figure out on oscillator 1, which is down 1 octave, that sounds pretty good there. So I want oscillator 1 to be over here. And I'll bring in oscillator 2 again. So I got oscillator 1 on its own wave position altogether. And now I can have this using its path. Oh shit, I'm looking at the wrong one. Now we got oscillator 2 doing this, but oscillator 1 is still in that same position. It's not being affected by any of this. But we can still use that path if we want, and now tell it to follow the envelope, and now it'll do the same sort of up thing that we saw before, but it's doing its own thing in its own column. One last thing that I want to show you that was really screwing with me was the velocity setting on the envelopes. If I clear this path, or reset the path, don't hit clear, and now add in a linear. See how it's going all the way from the bottom straight up. But if you add in velocity, and you don't give it a full amount of velocity, even though this envelope says it should be going to max, it obviously isn't because I didn't give it full velocity there. And there have been a few instances where I've just been like, well, what the hell's going on here? And I didn't notice, oh, well, my velocity was set on that particular envelope, and that's what was screwing with me. So I hope that helps you guys avoid some aggravation there.